All right. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Heromakers Podcast. Hey, Ann, how's it going?
Hi, Laurie. I'm doing so good. How
are you? Yeah. And I feel like we're officially on a roll now. We're kind of in week 2 here. So that means like that we're fully established, right?
That's right. Veterans.
That's right. And I'm very excited about our guest today because a number of years ago, I took the Strengths Finders, and one of my top strengths was developer. And I feel like both of the people that we're having on the podcast today, like, I don't know if I'll have to ask them if they actually have this strength, but I feel like both of them should because of what they're doing. Like developers, when you see like potential in people or things and you want to see those like come to fruition. And so it's very exciting to me to talk to people, right, who are helping people to be the best that they could be. So we want to welcome to the podcast today Tom Lillig and Dave Shurna. Hey, Tom. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Laurie. How are you? Great to be with you, man.
Good to have you on.
Great to be here.
Yeah. And for those of you guys who are going to be watching the video instead of listening to the podcast, you guys can check out their awesome No Barriers branding behind them. So both of them are associated with this amazing organization called No Barriers, which I actually just became familiar with maybe a month or two ago. And I kind of did a deeper dive into what you guys are doing, and it's pretty fantastic. So Tom, why don't we start with you and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to No Barriers, and then just like super quick snapshot of what No Barriers is.
Sure. Yeah. So Dave and I have an interesting past because we grew up together in Oak Park, Illinois. So it goes way, way far back to the beginnings. And you know, we were just two kids. We played basketball together in junior high. I don't think we even had a single class together, but we formed a bond during that time. And, you know, like all kids, you know, you're thinking about all the things that kids think about and having fun and doing that. But there was also always something deeper that connected us. I think that there was this desire that we had, even from that early age, to do something. We felt a calling to do something that would help others or help the world. And we also had this, so we had that, but we also had this drive to do it together. And so through the years, we stayed in touch with each other, and we're sort of feeling each other out for, okay, who's going to figure out that way that we can actually go and answer this calling. And then, you know, finally I got a call from Dave, and he was starting an organization that was going to be able to have this impact. And he asked me to sort of be his co-pilot on the board. And so Dave has been the CEO or executive director of this organization for some 17 years and has really been the visionary behind making this organization into a global force that really elevates people to unleash their fullest potential upon the world. So that's the quick and dirty version of it. But I just have so much praise for Dave and what he's done to build this into something that we've had lots of corporate sponsors and influencers join us in this cause. And this organization is called No Barriers. And our motto is, what's within you is stronger than what's in your way. Dave, did you want to add some color to that?
Wow, I thought that was a great intro. Thanks for your praise, Tom. It's been a real gift to be able to co-create this with a best friend, a close colleague and confidant, to have that trusted person that we've been co-creating this together for nearly 20 years. So I think I would just add that a big part of No Barriers, as evidenced by our tagline, what's within you is stronger than what's in your way, is helping people who are facing some big challenges in their lives or have faced challenges in the past, really break through and kind of be the best version of themselves despite the adversity that they face. So that's a big focus of No Barriers and the programs that we do, whether it's for veterans, kids, teachers, corporate executives, caregivers, all different sorts of populations. But we're kind of united by this belief that part of being human is a desire to live a life of purpose. And a big part of being human is having challenges. And we operate at this interesting interface between our quest for purpose and the realization that it's a really hard life to live, though it's what we all aspire for.
So Dave, do you have developer as one of your strengths? Do you know?
Yeah,
you?
for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right,
So
Tom.
you were right.
Tom?
You were
Yeah.
right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Tom, do you?
I've never done the strength
Okay.
finder, but I would imagine that it's in there.
It's there. Okay. So Dave, how did what did your journey look like to launch this organization, and like how did you know that this was something you wanted to do, and kind of be the cheerleader and the pusher to getting people to be the best version of them?
Yeah. Well, for me, this goes back to grad school. I was in grad school in North Carolina at Duke University, and it's a time of my life where I was really reflecting on the impact I wanted to have on the world and how I might make a difference. And as my fellow students and friends graduated, they all went off to their respective jobs, and I felt like I needed to have sort of a journey to put into perspective what had transpired in my life up until that point. And so I went on a trip to Africa to visit two close friends who were working with Jane Goodall in Tanzania. They've been working with her for a couple of years. And so I arrived there, they were finishing their volunteer program, and we proceeded to hitchhike down from Tanzania to South Africa over the course of about 4 months. And it was during that time where we sat down and we made a very intentional effort to craft our vision for ourselves and what we saw coming in the next 10 years of our lives. And this is a big part of the No Barriers philosophy, is vision. When you look at the ancient philosophers, when you look at religions from around the world, when you talk to executives, one thing that's pretty consistent in terms of finding your way to living a fulfilling life and getting through adversity is having a powerful vision for who you want to be and what you want to get out of life and what you want to give back. And so it was during that journey where I spent time sort of crafting through writing in a journal what it was I really wanted to do. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I wrote this letter to myself about what I wanted to do. And it involved starting this organization that I kind of mapped out. It involved that I did right away. It also involved writing a book, which took me 17 more years to do, but that came later. And so to me, that simple act of being very intentional and thoughtful about what you want to give back to the world and who you want to be started that for me. And it's amazing when you put that powerful intention down, what happens. You have this spiral, you get back and you're like, okay, I'm not going to go get the DC jobs that my colleagues were getting, or Boston East Coast jobs. I'm going to go and start this thing I dreamed of starting. And that's how it really began for me. But it all started with that powerful vision.
I love that so much. I feel like so many people don't know. Like if you're like, hey, what's your life purpose? What is your goal? Do you have a vision for your life? People mostly would just say, I don't know. So then is that the whole purpose of No Barriers, is actually trying to help people discover that? And is there like ways that you do that? Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a fundamental piece of the mission, is how do you pause, take a break from the chaos of our everyday lives, which are super distracting, and really focus on the things that matter most to you and put them down on a piece of paper. Or as Tom and we have our visions on a card that's in our wallet that we crafted in January. We updated our vision. What do we want to do? We don't have the same vision, but we're like, where do we want our life to be? It's interesting when you think about the mission of No Barriers, and I told you that we have these two avenues where we have a quest for purpose and want to unleash our potential, but we also face adversity. It turns out that when you study how to get through adversity, one of the pivotal elements is vision. So Nietzsche, for example, says, he who has a why to live for can endure anyhow. Our book, What's Within You, that we just released this past week, talks about Viktor Frankl and the power of having a vision for yourself, really sort of guiding you through the hardest of times as well as the best of times. And so No Barriers does exist to help people take that pause, often in the midst of their struggle, and remind themselves that tap into that light inside of us that has a deeper vision.
So that's interesting, Dave, because I've taken a couple of like personal retreats where like I kind of set out to figure out, okay, what does the next 5 years look like, or what do I want to accomplish? And I have this thing where like I want to get to the end of my life and not have any regrets, right? So I kind of work backwards and like, okay, what do I need to do now so that doesn't happen? But in my life, like I found too that like other people have played a really important part in this is what we see you doing, Laurie, like this is what you're good at, whatever. So so Tom, what let me ask you this. So you've been part of No Barriers and about as long as Dave, right? But what role does community play in helping people reach their full potential, and kind of how has that played out in No Barriers? Because you guys have these events, right, and these trips and things that people can do. So to talk about community and other people in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Community is such a huge aspect of the growth process and a huge part of everything that we do at No Barriers, which makes it somewhat difficult during COVID times, because so much of our work is based on these in-person retreats, events, concerts, where we're all coming together. So we've tried to pivot during COVID times to make sure that we can still offer that sense of community. In fact, in the book, we have a chapter on rope team. Rope team is the term that we use at No Barriers. It's the life element that we use at No Barriers when we talk about the importance of community. We all have challenges, and there truly is no way that we could make it through each of those challenges alone. We depend on the support and guidance of others. And whether those people be experts in the field who like know exactly what it takes for us to get through that barrier, whether they just be emotional supporters, cheering us on every step of the way, having that community of people to both ideate with and support us as we all make our way forward. Not all of us are going to become rock climbers, but we're all going to climb mountains in our lives. And having that community to be your rope team, to have that trust in you and you in them, to help us make it through these hurdles of life, to be vulnerable, and ultimately to help guide us to that guide us closer and closer to our vision, is so critical to the work that we do, not just in allowing one to achieve their vision, but allowing us to build a greater sense of camaraderie and love with one another. So yeah, community plays a huge role. And, I've seen it, we talk about this often in No Barriers because we witness this on, a daily basis sometimes. But it's also something that I write about in the book as it relates to the relationship that Dave and I have had through the years. And one story comes to mind, whereas while Dave and I's friendship goes way back, it was really built through a series of trust with one another, building upon a friendship with a trust that sort of allowed me to put my hand into a cheetah's mouth that Dave guided me into. I'm normally afraid of most animals larger than a house cat, so that was a huge leap of faith. So that's kind of like the funny episode, but it was an episode of building a tighter trust, so that when we both had a very, very tough time in our lives where I lost a powerful force in my life, my mother, and Dave and his wife lost a child that was on the way. We leaned into each other, and we were the forces that allowed us to both stand strong at the end of it, rediscovering how to laugh, rediscovering how to trust, and ultimately rediscovering that there's so much more that we both needed to do in this world to kind of get through this stuckness or this depression and find a way forward so that we can be our best selves and ultimately live out what is now on our vision cards.
That's amazing. This says that you guys we can't do this on our own. Like, we really need people for the long haul. I think in like a cancel culture that we're in right now, it's just easy to ditch. What I like to call the dump and run. But that's not good, like obvious. But also, I think what you're saying is that you need to earn that trust. And that trust is earned through experiences like the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's really beautiful. I really appreciated your long friendship. And I think actually going to say it's harder for guys to have friends. And it makes me heartbroken when I hear a lot of guys who don't have a good guy friend that they could really, really trust and lean into for the long haul. So I really appreciate that. Also, I'm hearing, sorry, Dave, did you want to say something?
Well, Ann, what I would say to like, rope team is such a critical part of this whole journey in the community build. But for those listeners who are out there saying, well, I don't have that. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a really important thing to talk about, because I was fortunate to have, a loving family and friends around me who supported me. And you could say, well, I built that as I lived. That's true. But we deal with a bunch of folks in our different programs who don't necessarily have the person that, like Laurie said, when she's thinking about her next vision for the next 5 years, who do I go to? I don't have, that doesn't immediately come to mind. Also really important to recognize that when you are in the midst of your greatest challenge, natural human tendency is not to open up to other people. It's to hold up and say, this is just me. It's to get isolated. It's to hold it all in. And so I think it's really important to recognize that rope team is really critical, and that part of what's been special about No Barriers is to connect people who need a rope team to others who are good rope team members. And so I think if you're a listener out there saying, well, I don't have those people in my life, how do I find them? The first step is to have the courage to know that they exist, and that there are a lot of people out there, if you're going through a big struggle in your life, who also are suffering and who are willing to be a part of your suffering and helping you. And there's a lot of people out there who are seekers, seeking to grow and learn, and that you just got to start looking for those right members of your rope team. And I think, what we find is usually folks start with one or two people, often one, and then they start to feel the momentum of that. At No Barriers, we certainly create those communities, because people come to our events and our courses and they're like, oh, well, I want to be in that. I want to have that feeling of people around me, and I want to look for those people. And they find them at No Barriers, and an organization like No Barriers and many others are good places to find like-minded folks who can help you on that journey.
So, so Dave, so there's kind of like the vision part of it, the community part of it. And then I want to like jump to the obstacle part of it too, the challenges. And there's like, when I think of this, like, there's a lot of times like the mental challenges, like when you have obstacles, right? You're like fear of the future, fear of the unknown. You have kind of tangible things that are pulling you back. One of the things though that I think of is failure. And I think a lot of people just kind of get stuck in believing that like failure is a bad thing, right? Or like if we're trying to push back something, we get stalled. Can you talk just for a few minutes about the importance of failure in our lives and how it helps us to grow?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is that even for people who fail fast and are used to failing and fail well, it still sucks, right? Like, not many people you talk to are like, I love to fail, right? Because there's just sort of this inherent questioning that goes on when you fail. Am I good enough? Am I worth it? Is my idea as good as I thought it was? And so what we talk about this in the book, we work with this in our organization. What we see is that people who are really good at failing are great, what we call pioneers. So they learn to take the failure, sit with the bad part of it. So don't ignore it. Don't pretend like it's all rosy, but don't wallow in it, right? So give yourself the time to, accept that it was a failure and you're frustrated, but quickly learn to pioneer, which is this idea of create new ways of thinking about that challenge. What did you learn from the challenge? What might you do to pivot? How might you change? And so we have these two pieces that I would say is, one is in the midst of failure, let yourself feel the emotions of the failure. Don't ignore them, but don't get stuck in them. And one way to get out of the stuck feeling is, we just talked about rope team. Most people, when they fail, they don't want to tell anybody. They want to be, or even when they're afraid of failing, they don't want to tell anyone. Lean on your rope team, and in opening up about failure, we talk about Brene Brown in our book, and the work she does around vulnerability is one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader. Open up to someone else. They're going to share with you the failures that they've had, and you're going to learn from them. So use your rope team. Pioneer, which is, all right, now that I've had that problem, what are some other ways that I might create a solution to that problem that I didn't think of before, now that I know where I failed? And often you'll result in a better solution than you had before. And then the third and final thing I would say is this idea in our book, which is called alchemy, which is really about a mindset. Alchemy is this mindset of turning lead into gold. And so when you talk to people who are really good at failing, really good at suffering through adversity and getting through it, one thing that they often talk about is exercising the muscle in our mind. They call it often the muscle in our mind, but exercising our brain's ability to reframe things in a positive way that may be thought of originally as something negative. And so how do you constantly seek optimism and hope and possibility even every time you fail? And so those are some three tools we use: is innovate through it, train your mind to get out of the wallowing and think optimistically and hopefully, and lean on the people that you might be embarrassed to share your failure with, because you will often find that you will learn a lot from that process that will help you grow.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really feel like you're saying a lot about our emotions and leaning into those, and that it's okay. And failure is not a 4-letter word. It actually helps you innovate. So that's amazing. And that we don't get there on our own, like with the rope team. That's awesome too. And we really need to open ourselves up when we actually, our tendency is what I would like to call turtling, when you just go into your shell and you're just leave me alone, or nothing's wrong because I'm in my shell and all is well in my shell. But curious about Tom, when you stuck your hand in what was the animal? What was the cat?
Cheetah. The cheetah.
The cheetah. The cheetah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would say that was really dumb, but if you actually, but way to go. And let's see your hands. They're both there.
Are they there?
Well done. But so then curious about one of our hero traits is courage. And I feel that there are pivotal moments, you just pointed to one. How long ago was that? How many years ago did you stick your hand into the cat's head?
Well, I only did it because Dave was guiding my quivering hand toward the cheetah's mouth. I would not have done it if Dave had not guided me there. But
healthy
yes,
peer pressure.
Yeah, I would say that I leaned into my trust in Dave, and that allowed me to have the courage that I needed in that moment. And that I think that is so important. I think that when you talk about courage, that's something that we see in so many of our participants, because I think that so much of it is having the courage to look inside themselves and understand what is there, and ultimately understands that, hey, while there is this brokenness that they may feel at times, either in themselves or by the way other people look at them or treat them, there's also this sense of bravery, and the sense of bravery to take on exactly whatever that is, that brokenness is, and find a way forward. So a lot of what Dave was talking about in terms of pioneering, I think about, there's this need to be fearless as you pursue whatever that next step is, and sort of having the courage to sort of take on that step, even if it's not something that has been realized for yourself or has been even realized in the world. So I think that to me is, the epitome of courage. And yeah, I mean, I was able to put my hand on the cheetah, but it was only because Dave was actually able to show me that this is okay. And you can read about that in chapter 5 of the book.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Dave, you're either one of the best friends to have or the worst.
A little bit of both, for sure.
And they're still
I mean,
friends, so I
I
guess
think this
it's
idea of
probably the
courage is
person.
sorry, Anne, I think this idea of courage is so important. One of our No Bears ambassadors that's talked about in this book is this woman, Mandy Harvey, who is a jazz vocalist who was completely deaf, who went on to be a finalist in America's Got Talent, and her performance on America's Got Talent was seen by 500 million people around the world. And when you think about courage, Mandy lost her hearing when she was studying to be a professional musician in college. She suddenly lost her hearing in the course of about a year, unexpectedly. And she, for a while, gave up on music. How can you be a deaf musician? Like, she can't hear herself sing. She was a singer. And one of our principles, after you've established your grand vision, Laurie talked about her 5-year plan and her rope team that she puts together to think about that vision being really important. So after you kind of think about what's your vision for who you are in your life, the very next step you take is to reach outside your comfort zone courageously and try something that is along the path of your journey, but not all the way there, right? It might take 5-10 years to get to your vision, but what's one step you can take? And so going back to Mandy, Mandy, the world saw her on the stage at America's Got Talent, many years after she had made her first courageous thing, which was she decided to go sing at a dinner place, just a local joint, one song. She's like, well, maybe I can still sing. I'll go try it at this restaurant. It'll probably suck. I'll probably be, never asked back again. But her first courageous step was, I'm going to sing in front of people, even though I'm deaf, and I'm not sure how it's going to go. And then that started a whole series of journeys. Okay, that went well. And then they asked her back, and well, maybe I can be part of a band. And then, these consecutive steps that are courageous moves outside of your comfort zone, some of which lead to failure, as we just talked about, is this constant process that helps you keep stretching and being yourself and unleashing your fullest self. There's this optimal zone where you don't want to take a step outside your comfort zone that is so grand that you are inevitably going to fail and it's going to be devastating to you. But you don't want to just stay and what we say sort of camp, which is super easy to do and not stretch yourself at all. You got to pick something that's a little bit kind of stretching you and constantly stretching you to get a little bit further.
Dave, there's so many good things in there. I could go down rabbit trails with what you said. What another one of our hero traits is actually, it's intentionality. So it's kind of like what you guys were talking about with just knowing yourself and knowing who you are and kind of living into that. So I think that's part of it. But Tom, can we talk about like hope for a second too? So when I was reading some of the reviews for your guys' book on Amazon, and we'll talk about your book in a second. But one of the things that somebody had said, well, there's this idea of hope, but then there's also this like dream the impossible. Like somebody had mentioned that in one of the one of the comments there about that this book kind of inspires you to do that. And so I don't know if you guys know who Bob Goff is, but okay, so he wrote his latest book is called Dream Big, and I remember him giving this example of like, so if somebody tells you no, like you go to the front door, somebody tells you no, you're knocking, and then they close the door on you, and it seems like the door is shut. Then he says, well, go find the back door, like go around and find a way. If you really want it, you'll go around back and find that back door to get in, right? So it's like, don't let one person's no be your no. Like if you're really committed to something, find another way to get there. And that, like, kind of that picture for me was very, very helpful because what it's saying is like that closed door that sometimes we feel when we're trying to move forward, that there's other things we can't see that might be there. There's other ways of getting there that we can't see. And so this whole idea of just the things that we can't see that are possible, I think is a really big, good motivation for people, right? Like when we look at things, what we see isn't necessarily the whole picture. So can you just talk a little bit about the role of hope when people are overcoming obstacles and moving towards their vision?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hope is such a powerful idea. And the example that you give of, of Goff's example of trying the back door is another great one. One of the things that I think that relates to our no barriers philosophy about those examples really comes down to, something that we talked about before, which is, this idea of reaching beyond your comfort zone. So Dave talked about Mandy and the idea of stretching beyond what we believe is possible. One of the great things that not many people know about with Mandy is that when she first lost her hearing, she was kicked out of university. Wow. And she was in a deep depressive state. And she went home, and her dad asked her to play a song with him. They had grown up in a family. She was a preacher's kid, and singing and music had always been such a big part of their life. And Mandy at that time was, just totally scared, even though it was her dad, but she reluctantly agreed to sing a song with him. Now, Mandy had lost her hearing. Mandy had not sung. She had dreams at that time of becoming a music teacher that had been totally dashed when she lost her hearing. But she agreed to sing this song. And as she started to sing, her dad played alongside on the guitar. And she looked over, and her dad was crying. And she thought to herself, I must be so bad. I must be breaking my father's heart. But what it turned out was that those were tears of joy. Even though Mandy had lost her hearing, she had found her voice. She was pitch perfect. She had maintained the muscle memory of what she needed to do in order to stay on pitch. And in that moment, there was this belief that she had in herself that said, yes, I can do this. And while she wasn't singing in front of 500 million people like the YouTube videos prove later, it was the beginning of that journey, that beginning of hope, beginning of realizing that future that she had once dreamed for herself could in fact become a reality. A very different one that she once had, but still a step in the direction toward her dreams.
That's amazing. I have a music degree, and so that's huge, because you have dreams and you pour hours and years into your craft, and so then to be kicked out of university, but then as well, like I was really struck by, I guess, her initial perception or understanding of her father's tears were negative, but that's not the truth. So often what we perceive immediately, maybe because of our insecurities or our fears or our worries, is that we're a failure. But then to push through that initial to the truth is really powerful. So thanks for sharing that story. For those of us who don't know very much about No Barriers, your organization, I would love to hear more about the different, just more about your organization and what you guys do, and the different constituents that you focus on and why.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've been around for nearly 20 years now, going on year 18. We are a nonprofit organization that doesn't focus on a specific population, but focuses more on these philosophies that we're talking about. How do you find purpose? How do you break through adversity? But over the years, certain populations have bubbled up who really resonate with that message. It is sort of like part of our human experience. So in many ways, it is a message for everyone. But the populations that we've served have somewhat come organically and sometimes intentionally. So we started our work with kids and teachers at the middle and high school level. That evolved into college, and now we're doing grade school as well. We have curriculum in schools. We have programs for kids in person. We have online stuff that kids can do, teachers can do. We added our veterans program on the 10th anniversary. One of the people who helped start this organization with us is a blind man who summited Mount Everest, Eric Weinmeier. He went on to reach the 7 summits. Eric, on the 10th anniversary of that historic Everest climb, said, I want to do something special, and decided to do a program for veterans with disabilities. And so for nearly 10 years now, we've been running programs for veterans who are seeking community and purpose and redefined identity, oftentimes after some sort of traumatic injury in the military. We serve caregivers, which is a word for people who spend a large portion of their time taking care of someone else who may be terminally ill, may have a disability. We serve businesses who are looking to teach their employees how to lead with purpose and break through challenges in the business climate. The communities, we serve a lot of people with disabilities, people with illnesses. And so really, it's this very vibrant, diverse fabric of humanity from definitely predominant US, but from all over the world as well. I think 17 different countries participated in our most recent event. But I think what we find is it's really an organization for people who maybe feel that there's something more they want out of life, and they can't quite put their finger on it yet, and they want some help on that journey. Or someone who's been through a big struggle and wants to get back in touch with who they really are. And so, we'll have, I think I was saying earlier, we had over 1 million live stream views of our recent event, tens of thousands of active participants in our programs. But it's been a little bit of intentionality combined with organic fortuitousness of who comes to the community.
And what I'll build on that is just say that when we have our live events, like when we have our in-person No Barrier Summits, there is nothing more exciting and exhilarating than seeing these populations from different communities come together and say to each other, the veterans to the students, the caregivers to the business leaders, say to each other, you got this. You can make it up that rock wall. You can get up on that stage and dance. You can do that thing that you never dreamed possible before. And that communion, to me, is really something beautiful that I think is, if I had to say there's one thing that we're really trying to explain here, is that while the book is called What's Within You, it's really what's within us. There's a shift in mentality from me to we. And that we attitude, when it takes over at a summit and see the cross-pollination between our groups, there's nothing more beautiful, and there's nothing more that gives me hope that this organization is making a difference, not just within our community, but in the world.
So it seems like it's, I like it because it's kind of like a grassroots movement in some ways, right? Which is fun, because that's usually where you see the need, and it bubbles up until it kind of reaches this critical mass, right? Where it's like, now you are serving veterans, you're serving caregivers, which are sometimes underrepresented, and they don't maybe have the resources that other people have too, which is really helpful. So Tom, let's end and talk a little bit about your book and what you hope people will get out of it. It's called, and we'll link to this in the show notes as well, but it's called What's Within You, Your Roadmap to Living Life with No Barriers. So what is your hope that people will get out of it? And then where can people purchase it and learn more about it?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, the book has just come out, and we're super excited about it. I'd say that, when Dave created this organization and asked me to be his co-pilot on it, our vision from the beginning was to be able to make a sizable impact in people's lives, not just at the surface level, but to truly transform lives. And so our vision for this book is for it to be that forever by the nightstand, tattered, dog-eared notes in it. We want people to sort of jump into it with a passion and really get more out of it than they put into it. And I think that this book, to me, is if it can leave people with the belief that what's within you is stronger than what's in your way, then we will have done our job.
Mm-hmm. It's good. And if you guys Google it, you guys are all over the place. You're an Amazon bestseller, and all sorts of good things. So, well, guys, thanks for joining us. I feel like if we start a book club, this should be like one of our first books, right? And so that'll be our next thing is we'll start a book club, and then we'll do the club around this what's within you.
I was going to say, thank you so much for putting this book into the universe. I feel like we all need it. I feel like you guys and No Barriers are in that sweet spot. You know what I mean? You're like that that connector between what we want to do and pushing us that little like extra cheer to help us move forward in our lives. And I feel like this book is not going to be one of those that are just going to be dog-eared, but it's going to be a book that you want to buy a number of copies for, so that when you read it, you're like, I have at least 5 friends that I want to give this to them for their birthday or for Christmas, because Christmas is coming.
Well, we certainly hope so, and all proceeds go back to the organization. So Amazon.com, you can find it, What's Within You, and we're just so honored to be on this podcast with you and to share a little bit about our organization and our book. So thank you.
I'd also just say that there are certain members out there listening who may be like me and maybe like the people who are on this podcast who read a book and then go do what's in the book. Yeah. Lots of people are not that way. So lots of people read a book and, put it down and don't do anything. And so we are doing a monthly course tied to the book. It's a 30-day challenge to actually live the principles in the book. Our first course starts November 1st. You can find out more on our website at nobarriersusa.org. We know that some people need the course to actually go and bring it to life. They're not going to just read the book and go do it. And so the course brings the best of all the programming we've done over the years together into an at-home sort of learning experience, team-based. It's not just all Zoom calls and videos. It's a team-based missions and challenges that get you off the platform and out there trying to actually do these things so that you can kind of start living that best life that you dream of. So hopefully you check that out if you're interested in joining us on that journey.
Take the course with your rope team.
It's an amazing course. Yeah, actually we've done the course with corporate teams, and it's an amazing experience for uniting a team together. But yeah, bringing your rope team together on that journey is a great idea.
Well, you guys, we'll look forward to that November 1st for that. And then right now the book, and anybody who's listening to this podcast, go buy the book now. And as Ann says, buy 5 copies for other people that you know. Thanks, you guys. And thanks for listening, everyone. And if you love this podcast, give us 5 stars and tell other people about it. And thanks for another great episode, Ann.
Yeah, excited. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.
Thank you so much.